From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. Thank you for tuning in this morning, Wednesday, September 25th, 2024, for our fans and community members that are in Florida ahead of Hurricane Helene. Please make sure to exercise the utmost caution. I know we in Georgia have a tropical storm warning because of this weather, but Helene did move from a tropical storm to a hurricane this morning. Expected to be a hurricane 1 or 2 category when it hits the coast of Florida, especially the west coast of Florida. So y'all stay safe. That's really, really important, y'all. So without further ado, we've got a packed show for all y'all today. It's great to be back in the studio because one thing I love about being in the studio, beyond just being home and being in my natural environment, is I have my espressos. So last few days, West Coast, 6 a.m., not a lot of coffee shops are open. Even though it's 6 a.m., they should be. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. All right, let's go ahead and kick off the show with CrowdStrike finally revealing that they have revamped several testing, validation, and update rollout processes to prevent the July outage that caused over $1.6 trillion in damages globally. So in a testimony before the House Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, CrowdStrike Vice President Adam Myers outlined the new set of protocols that include carefully controlled rollouts of software updates, better validation of code inputs, and new testing procedures to cover a broader array of problematic scenarios. The content update back in July of 2024 that kind of triggered what I like to call the weekend of the blue screen of death across multiple companies, resulted in outages and business delays and business continuity issues and so forth that only impacted Windows machines, not Linux or Mac machines. That was the other thing there that really was the saving grace. Myers told the committee during the hearing that CrowdStrike software engineers have enhanced existing testing procedures to cover a broader array of scenarios, including testing all input fields under various conditions to detect potential flaws before rapidly releasing threat detection configuration information is sent to the sensor. He also said the company has added additional runtime checks to the system to ensure that the data provided matches the system's expectations before any processing occurs. So all in all, we've heard a lot of lawsuits as of yet. They've all been in the we've hired lawyers, we're looking at the lawsuits, we're reviewing the contracts, we're building the case, etc. So all in all, and obviously this is coming on the heels of CrowdStrike's Falcon event last week in Vegas. So all in all, CrowdStrike updating their capabilities there. We'll see if that really does prevent the next one. And by the way, just to put it out there, a lot of rollouts go bad. The only difference is not everyone is as successful as CrowdStrike is, meaning specifically that the reason we all still talk about CrowdStrike, and like I was listening to a talk and someone like brought up the CrowdStrike thing, what had nothing to do with the talk, but it was just like, here's a talking point that'll get everyone to agree with me. The CrowdStrike outage, a lot of companies have outages. The fact is they don't have as many customers. They don't have the success that CrowdStrike has. Thus, it ends up being, a bunch of mid-sized companies that are out of loop for 2 or 3 days, 2-3 hours or a day or two, and then they come right back to it, and that's that. If you're Ivanti, at what point do you just say, I'm done? And if you're an Ivanti customer, at what point do you say, rip and replace? This is the third exploit in the wild for Ivanti in 2 weeks. Third. And if you Google Ivanti and just say Ivanti vulnerabilities, the list is so long that just on the first page of Google, you'll probably end up just with this year's vulnerabilities alone. And if you keep going back, you'll find vulnerabilities dating back to like 2017. At what point does Ivanti admit they have a significant challenge with deploying effective security products, thus creating a security risk rather than being a partner to a solution? I'm sorry, I never really criticize victims, but someone's got to say this out loud because I don't hear a lot of people talk about this. The latest is CVE 2024-759-3. It's a critical virtual traffic manager authentication bypass vulnerabilities that would allow a remote unauthenticated attacker to create an administrator account. It's a low complexity attack. They've announced a patch for this on August 12th, and later the company updated its advisory to inform customers that while it had not been aware of in the wild exploitation at the time, now we know that there's a wild exploitation. Census is reporting seeing 97 internet exposed Aviv VTM instances, and Zumai has seen 164 this year, the majority of which are in the US and Japan. CISA added this CVE to their Kev catalog shortly after adding the two additional CVEs we've reported on in the last 2 weeks. Those are CVEs 2024-8963 and 81900, which impacts Ivanti's cloud services appliances, and both have been chained together to create an unauthenticated remote code execution type of attack. If Congress wants to invite anyone to testify, Ivanti would be it. Leave CrowdStrike alone, call out Ivanti, and say, how is it that we deal with this stuff? What is it about your processes that's broken? That's a better question than CrowdStrike, just slightly, a bit. So let's talk about generative AI here. So an email campaign that's targeting French users. Researchers discovered a malicious code that was essentially using generative AI to deliver an async RAT malware. Now, the criminals were using generative AI to create convincing emails. Government agencies have warned about this, so has the private sector. But this is one of the first cases where we see essentially the entire campaign developed through AI. And while the campaign is ongoing, generative AI is actually improving the campaign as it goes along. And what this does is it lowers the complexity and the technical knowledge that specific actors would need. Essentially, when they rely on AI to develop the malware and launch it, and they let AI kind of run with it, you don't need to be an expert at everything. You just need to be a really good prompt engineer and understand what you're looking at. The campaign employed an HTML smuggling to deliver a password-protected zip archive that researchers said brute forcing to unlock. HP Wolf Security reports that the criminals with low technical skills are increasingly using Gen AI to develop malware. One example provided in the Threat Insights report for Q2. In early June, HP discovered a phishing campaign targeting French users, again using HTML smuggling to deliver a password-protected zip archive that contained a VPS script and a JavaScript code. Once they brute forced the password, the researchers analyzed the code, found that the attacker had neatly commented the entire code, something that really doesn't happen in human developed code, but rather is really popular within AI, as you can see here in the example in front of you. This would be how AI would write code. This is one of the kind of things about AI. They actually document their code very, very effectively. In the later stages of the attack, it downloads and executes an async RAT, which is open source and freely available malware that locks keystrokes on victim machines and provides an encrypted connection to a remote monitoring and control station. That malware can also deliver additional payloads. So all in all, we're now seeing generative AI really start to develop. This one is French, right? So unsophisticated threat actors that don't know French, right, are able to actually launch these types of campaigns. Keep an eye out for this. Now, I'll tell you this, as a CISO, I look at this and I go, we know this is coming. Detection wise, we're still really, really early, right? Most security solutions today don't detect malicious AI, they detect malicious activity. So AI could potentially be trained to not act maliciously in its activity, right? You could try that. And if you're a white hat hacker, you should try it, because as of right now, I have yet to see security solutions that solve AI challenges. And I think that's because we look at it from the same realm as we look at everything else. Whether written by AI or human, it's going to go through a specific kill chain. We're programmed to understand that kill chain, and so that's what it's going to be. So we'll see. Good morning to people tuning in on YouTube and LinkedIn as well as X. Thank you all for being there. Auto Canada's warning that employee data was compromised in the August cyber attack claimed by the Hunters International ransomware gang. So 66 dealerships, around 1,000 or so employees. All in all, that's the information that was compromised there. The data includes full name, address, date of birth, payroll information, social insurance numbers, bank account number, scans of government issued ID, and any personal documents stored on a work computer or driver tied to a work computer. Those impacted got a 3-year free of charge identity theft protection and credit monitoring coverage. So there's that. The Center for Medical and Medicaid Services, CMS, which is a federal agency, I can't talk this morning, announced earlier this month that the health and personal information of more than 3 million health plan beneficiaries was exposed in the MOVEit attack that Clop ransomware conducted last year. So another victim coming forward there. CMS is a federal agency within HHS. It administers the nation's major healthcare programs, including Medicaid and CHIP. A press release from CMS on September 6th informed that the agency and WS were notifying 946,000 people with Medicare about their PII being exposed in the attack that happened over a year ago. So there's that there as well. If you haven't checked out our Substack, please make sure to do so right now. jamesazar.substack.com. A lot of exclusive writing and content is only available there. Nearly a decade has passed since the cybersecurity community started warning about the automatic tank gauge systems being exposed to remote hacker attacks, and these vulnerabilities continue to arise. Several cybersecurity companies showed back in 2015 that ATGs could be remotely hacked and even warned based on honeypot data that these devices have been targeted. BitSight conducted an analysis earlier this year and found that the situation has not improved in terms of vulnerabilities or exposed devices. The company looked at 6 ADG systems from 5 different vendors and L8000, Alisonic Sibelia, and Franklin TS550. 7 of the flaws have been assigned a critical severity rating. The one thing I will say about this is critical infrastructure does not spend money on something that doesn't impact critical operation. The reason I say that is because from a regulatory compliance perspective, it's only critical operations that matter. So as long as you're still able to produce energy, as long as you're still able to transport energy, and as long as you're able to deliver energy or services, no one's going to eat your lunch for these vulnerabilities. No one. Until the shareholders does. Meaning an attack comes in, manipulates the data poisoning, you don't bill accurately anymore, you overbill, underbill, etc., then you'd see that actually happen. So there's that. So big deal, kind of, but not so much. Oh, so Telegram CEO Pavel Durov is starting to pay off a little bit for governments. Telegram will start handing over user information like phone numbers and IP addresses to authorities in order to limit the criminal activity that occurs on the platform. That's an update to its privacy policy. If Telegram receives a valid order from relevant judicial authorities, that confirms you're a suspect in a case involving criminal activities that violate the Telegram's terms of service, they will perform a legal analysis of the request and may disclose your IP address and phone number to the relevant authorities. That was something that was a no-no before, so it appears the pressure on Durov is starting to break Telegram. A threat actor likely operating out of India is relying on various cloud services to conduct cyber attacks against energy, defense, government, telecom, and technology entities in Pakistan, according to Cloudflare. They're tracking this as sloppy leaming. The group's operation aligns with Outrider Tiger, a threat actor that CrowdStrike previously linked to India, and which is known for the use of adversary emulation frameworks such as Silver and Cobalt strikes in its attacks. The hacking group has been observed relying on Cloudflare workers in espionage campaigns targeting Pakistan and other South and East Asian countries, including Bangladesh, China, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Cloudflare has identified and mitigated 13 workers associated with the threat actor. The threat actor, Cloudflare says, appears particularly interested in compromising Pakistani police departments and other law enforcement organizations and targeting entities associated with Pakistan's sole nuclear power facility. So they're using phishing, they're using malicious PDFs, and so forth in order to gain access there. Again, that's another one there. Cyber threats to railroad loom as industry and TSA are trying to grow an uneasy partnership. The fact that TSA is even involved in this is mind-boggling for me. It really is. It just TSA has no business running cybersecurity in railroads or pipelines at all. TSA is an agency that should technically go away altogether, because DHS as an entity, where TSA is under DHS, should be able to do all the work. You have CISA, cybersecurity infrastructure security agency. I think railroads and pipelines qualify under infrastructure. I mean, last I checked, they're under that definition in every normal country in the world. So shrink government and get rid of TSA. Please. Please. No one trusts TSA. They're not going to trust TSA. They're not. TSA's history is filled of mistrust, filled of fables, filled. Not one person tells me I feel safe with TSA at the airport. Not one. Haven't met one person yet that says, oh, TSA, that's what scares the people away. Nope. And they're not going to do this here. This is failing in every single aspect. Railroads, critical infrastructure require an agency that's built to help them. That agency is CISO. Please, for the life of me, do this. Finally, Swedish authorities are accused Iran yesterday of being responsible for the thousands of text messages sent to people in Sweden calling for revenge over the burnings of the Quran back in 2023. Iran has denied those accusations, but according to officials in Stockholm, the cyber attack was carried out by Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard, which hacked an SMS service and sent some 15,000 text messages in Swedish over the string of public burnings of the Quran that took place over several months in Sweden during the summer of 2023. Senior prosecutor in Sweden said that the preliminary investigation shows that this was a nation-state operation in order to create unrest in Sweden. The Swedish company was not named in the investigation. The Iranian embassy in Sweden rejected the baseless allegations, but we all know what they are. They are the financiers of Hamas and Hezbollah. They are the financiers and responsible for the death of thousands of U.S. soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. Iran is a wolf, and their current president is pretending to be a sheep in wolf's clothing, and some dumb Western leaders seem to believe this going on the heels of the UN General Assembly. Believe nothing from Iran. Nothing from Iran. This president, like not his predecessor, which was a murderer. This guy seems to be anyone's moderate when they say we don't want war now. You don't want war now because over the last 20 years, Iran has built all of its proxies to go after Israel. And over the last year, especially the last week and a half, in the last several months, everything you've built for 20 years has been gone overnight. The leader of Hamas was taken out by a missile in an IRGC facility in Tehran for the swearing in of this new president. Hezbollah is getting demolished in Lebanon. Their entire upper echelon of the military is gone. Everything Iran touches is evil. Everything Iran does is designed. When they cheer death to America and death to Israel, they are not a friend of the West. Macron and every other Western weak leader has seemed to forget that what they chant in the streets is not platitudes. They mean it. In case you need a reminder, we're nearly a year since the October 7th attack, when the Israeli government thought that when all those protests and all the death to Jews that Hamas said was just platitude, and that if you give him economic stability, that would leave you alone. And it turns out that thousands of workers from Gaza that entered Israel were working, making money, but also spying on behalf of Hamas. Hamas had perfect maps of all the cities and all the kibbutzes around Israel. They knew every house. They knew the people in the homes. All of that coming from Palestinians in Gaza that were given an opportunity to work in Israel. And Iran is the same. And anything different from that is just absolute foolishness by these leaders that will bring disaster to the world and are leading us to the brink of World War III. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back with a whole lot more tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, live here with all the latest and greatest. Until then, please make sure to subscribe. Go check out our Substack for a whole lot more. And until then, have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.